Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. Today I'm looking at a German loco from Roco. Usually on this channel I make a point of not reviewing second-hand locomotives, and that's because it's not fair to the manufacturer if the previous owner has modified or damaged the loco in some way. But today's loco, as far as I can tell, is not currently in production, and it's so incredibly unusual and unique looking that I've decided to make an exception. So the loco is this. It is made by Roco, and the loco comes from the Royal Bavarian State Railways, so yeah, it's German. And the nickname for this class of locomotive is the glass box, or glass boxers. And it's easier to remember that than the actual name of this class, which I will give you later when I've got my handy piece of paper. But this was an eBay find. It cost me £79.50, which I think seems quite pricey for a second-hand loco in unknown condition, and it doesn't look like a particularly modern one either. But that's quite exciting in a way because I don't know what to expect. So we're going to have a look at this thing. I don't know whether it works or not, so it's going to be an odd review because during the mechanical section I'm probably going to be servicing this just to make sure it is in decent mechanical condition. So it's going to be a bit of an adventure, it's going to be a bit of a journey of discovery, but I invite you to join me. Let's take a look at a Roco glass box. And you probably can't appreciate just how odd looking this is just through the front of the box here, but I have seen the product listing images for this, and believe me, it's an odd loco, so looking forward to seeing it properly in the flesh. Let me show you the end of the box, which doesn't give us very much information. It's got a number, 43257. It's got a little picture of the loco, which is a very rough approximation of what it looks like, and that is everything. It does say that it's made in Austria, which is interesting. Most of the stuff I look at is made in China, so it'll be at least interesting, yeah, to see something made in Austria. Apart from that though, there's very little else to see on the box. So let's open it up and let's see. Alright, so there's the loco. I do want to see whether there are any instructions with this. Yep, and there are. So let's start by taking a look at these. So, first things first, this is mostly in German and other different languages, but there's an English section in the centre, which appears to be a history or some information on the glass boxes in real life. So pause and read that if you'd like to. Let's see what's inside. Okay, again, multi-language, which is good, to be fair. Unpacking, well, I think this has been unpacked before, so that probably doesn't apply. Clean it and maintain it, removing the body, and a rough diagram of what's inside. The motor, by the looks of it, says you've got to clean the brushes, yeah, etc. That's fine, I'll do that if necessary. And then on the back, looks as though it's showing you where to lubricate the loco. So nothing too complicated about that, by the looks of things. This must have been the eBay seller. The junction box, there you go, shout out to the junction box. And second-hand model railways bought and sold, okay. Now there's something odd about this packaging, because is this just a plasticky logo? Oh no, there are accessories. I had no idea that they were under there, so it's a good job I checked that. Right, what the devil are these? I'm going to have to check back over the instructions to see whether these are used for anything. Are they? No. Well, as far as I can tell, none of the diagrams refer to those, so that's a mystery. Maybe it's a gift from a previous seller. I don't know. Maybe they have magical properties. Here's an accessories bag which contains all sorts, really. Vacuum pipes, screw link couplings, just moulded static ones though. They don't move by the looks of it. And quite a few other bits and bobs that you can fit to the loco if you want to, so that's useful. And then what have we got here? It looks as though we've got some alternative couplings perhaps. Yeah, it looks like the loco's got knuckle couplings fitted to it. These look more like the sort of clip together couplings that I've seen a few times on some Hornby DMUs, I believe. Something similar to that anyway. Right, dodgily packed loco, ahoy. Let's pull the sponge away from it. Oh, I tell you what, look at that thing. It seems like a very complex and detailed loco to be packaged in this way, doesn't it? Yes, so what's the condition like? Let's pull this out very gently and see. Not great, so it's dropped off it already. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I'll have to investigate that later on. It might just be one of those locos, folks. But here it is, the Roco glass box. And yeah, it's all over the place in terms of detail. Lots of stuff bent, quite dirty, so I'm going to have to try and clean this up, I suppose. But apart from that, it's still a very charming little character, isn't it? With a lot of detail to it, that's for sure. And it's incredibly unusual. I mean, look at the way the cab encapsulates the boiler. I mean, how compact does that make this loco? And as you can see at the back here, we've got this gravity-fed coal system, which puts the coal directly into the firebox. And that allows these, as we're going to talk about in a second, to be operated by one single person, because you've got this automated system doing the job of the fireman. The other person on board is just doing the driving. So it's an absolutely fascinating loco. It's reasonably heavy too, actually. Yeah, the chassis and the running plate here are both die-cast, which is great. Gives the loco some really good weight for its size. I will get these on the scales in just a second. Right, so I'm going to try and find where the missing detail parts came from, and then I'm going to show you this thing in all of its glory. First though, a little bit more info on these locos in real life. The glass box locomotives, formerly known as the Class PTL 2/2, there you go, were a fleet of 48 locomotives in total, introduced in 1905 to the Royal Bavarian State Railways, a company that would grow to become the second largest German state railway. These locos were designed to be extremely light and compact for use on branch lines. Despite looking like an 060 loco on first glance, the engines were of course 040s, with a shaft and counterweight taking the place of where a centre set of driving wheels would be on an 060. The original design had internal valve gear between the frames without the centre shaft, yet a later 1908 version of the design had outside valve gear, as we can see on this model. The class was designed for one-man operation, like I said, and therefore it had many windows in the cab, facing in all directions for improved visibility. It's this design feature that led to the nickname glass box. The glass boxes were retired in 1963, although a couple still exist in some form or other, though none are in running order today, as far as I can tell. So there it is, up close and personal for you, the glass box locomotive from Roco. And I'm pleased to say that this loco is exactly as bizarre, unusual and fascinating as I'd hoped it would be. It really is quite the loco, isn't it? Not only that though, but it's a very, very complex and detailed model, which is quite surprising. I can't find a manufacture date on the box anywhere, but it looks quite old, doesn't it? Yet the level of detail on this loco seems to easily rival some of the British locos that I see produced today, which is really quite something given the loco's size. The loco's weight is also quite impressive. It weighs in at 144 grams, which is actually more than a Hornby 060 Sentinel. And look at the size difference there. This loco is lighter than this loco, which seems very strange, doesn't it, given how much smaller the glass box is. But anyway, let's take a close look at some of the various details. The decoration is relatively simple. It's in your typical sort of German loco livery. So you've got the red chassis and the black upper body, but there are quite a few separately painted parts. For instance, the coupling rods have the red painted centres, which is interesting, and the body has several prints along the side, which are very, very tiny, but yet I believe legible. You've got the electric warning signs on the taller parts of the loco, as well as the running number duplicated onto the coal firing system. Let's take a look at some of the physical detailing though, because the valve gear, despite its tiny size, is fully and minutely modelled on here. Some of these rods and such are plastic and they're just sort of popped together, and I've had one of them come apart already, but they seem to be back together okay now. But look at the size of some of these rods and such, absolutely tiny. Cannot wait to see this loco up and running. And there is where the centre wheels would be if this was an 060. It just looks like an 060, doesn't it? But no, of course it is not. The Loco has fully detailed cylinders. As you can see, we've got steps coming down from the running plate, which is very large, allowing the driver to come out onto these gangways and access coaches that may be coupled up to this. And you've got a nice texture down there on the walkways as well. Handrails all the way around too. Some of these are quite fragile, one of them broken, I believe. Not by me, that's just the way it was. But very fine nevertheless. You've got these little ramps which would, I suppose, come down in order to make contact with a coach to allow for safe crossing. Very interesting. The buffers are made of metal and they're very fine, but alas, not sprung. So there's at least one thing our British locos have that this one doesn't. But otherwise, I think the standard of this Loco is quite above and beyond, frankly. And you've got these separately fitted lamps. I'll be surprised if these lamps actually work, but they have been painted white on the front with a glass or plastic lens fitted to them, so they do at least look realistic. The smoke box is very, very detailed, as you can see. You've got a very detailed smoke box door, little what looks like a Westinghouse pump on the side, or it could be the sort of mechanical reverser. And then on the other side, loads more separately fitted detail on the smoke box area. And then similarly, you've got the coal feed system, which is marvelously complex. I just love the fact that all of this detail is on this Loco, because you can really look at the model, not the real thing, and understand how this Loco would have worked, which I find absolutely fascinating. And then you've got the cab itself with the telltale windows all over this thing, and you can understand why this Loco was called a glass box. Look, how many windows have we got? So we've got 3 on each side, so that's 6. And is it 3 on each end? No, it looks like 4 on each end. Is that right? So that's 8 plus 6. That is 14 windows on this Loco. Is that a record for an engine of this size? I think it probably must be. And inside there is quite a bit of detail. Now, I believe to take the body off and look at the mechanism, I will have to remove the top of the cab and then the detail piece underneath. So if I'm able to do that successfully, I will cut in some shots of the detail within right now, and that's what you're seeing if I was able to. A marvelously detailed Loco, given that it's about as long as one of my fingers. Yeah, absolutely incredible. So it's heavy, it's very detailed, it is fragile, but I wouldn't say it's poor quality particularly. And obviously this is not brand new, it is second hand, it has been used by a previous owner. This is not necessarily as it would have arrived from the factory. But it's still very impressive nevertheless, quite a bit more detailed than I'm used to on British locomotives. And assuming it works okay, I don't mind that I paid quite a lot for this. In fact, having paid less than £80 does seem quite reasonable given the complexity of the model. So what I think we'll do next, I'm not going to get it onto the track and test it first because I don't know how long it's been sitting in its box. So I'm going to follow the instructions, see if I can get the body off, see if I can lubricate the mechanism and clean it if necessary. And we'll also talk about the qualities of the mechanism as we go. So let's get started. Please wish me luck. So there it is, the glass box down onto the track, looking absolutely tiny, sitting here where all of my other Locos sit. It is HO scale though, so slightly smaller in size. Right, so I have not tested this Loco yet. I still do not know whether it works, but I have taken a look at the mechanism and I filmed the process. So the base keeper plate is removable by undoing 2 screws, one at either end. Bit tricky to remove the base keeper because there are some decorative rods connected to the bottom of it which you kind of have to pull out. But after that you can see that we do have 3 axles on this thing. So yes, those counterweights in the centre on that shaft, they are not just dummies, they do have a shaft coupled to them as well. There are no separate bearings on this chassis, but the axles sit into fully enclosed bearings that are cast by the looks of it. Not as good, I don't think, as separately fitted bearings, but probably better than a half bearing that you'd see on a typical cast chassis without the separate bearings. Anyway, I took this opportunity to clean up the excess lubricant and add my own lubricant just so that this Loco is not too dry. The pickups, I notice, are touching the tops of the flanges, which is a slightly odd design. Not the most easy to access either due to the fact that the axles are stuck in place, but I just got a cotton bud in there to try and clean those best I could. Next up then, to remove the body, you first have to unclip the handrails. So yes, it's one of these fiddly little locos. It is tiny, to be fair, so how easy would it be to engineer a body that just comes out nice and easily? I'm not too sure, but this is what you've got to do. Then that allows you to quite trickily unclip the body and pull it off. And here's the detail piece that I showed you earlier on. I should say this part is all made of metal. It wasn't obvious before, but yeah, it's a fully die-cast piece, which means that the boiler, the smoke box, and also that automatic coal feeding system is all made of metal. That's partially why the loco is so heavy. Anyway, unscrewing this part reveals the 5-pole motor underneath with a flywheel. Was not expecting that. That's very cool to see. Although obviously there is no DCC socket, which does date the loco somewhat. I took the motor out to clean and lubricate it, and we'll find out whether it works shortly. Then in terms of gauge, it comes in at 14.2mm to 14.3, which is reasonably close to the standard. Now though comes the moment of truth. I haven't put power to this motor yet. I have no idea whether it works. I have no idea whether I put it together properly. I have no idea whether there's anything fundamentally wrong with this that will prevent it from ever working. No clue. So let's find out, shall we? Forwards direction, does it work at all? Please say it does. It doesn't. Why not? Okay, I guess I will do some troubleshooting and I'll get back to you on that one. Okay, well, not entirely sure what went wrong there. I think it's something to do with the motor mount. The motor isn't really fitted in a very positive or absolute way. It just kind of sits on top of the chassis, and then that die-cast cab detail piece kind of sits on top of it, clamps it in place. But once it does, you have no idea whether the motor's sitting properly or whether those little brass contacts that power the motor are sitting correctly. But I think they are now, so take two. Does the loco work? Hey, yes it does. And with that flywheel already, I can tell that it's super nice and smooth. Look at this, if I cut it off at 50, yeah, it sort of slows down gently rather than stops abruptly. I tell you what, it's a really, really beautiful runner. That's 50% speed, and look how slowly it runs. So the gearing is absolutely excellent. The dead zone of the express point is right there, and it's just gone over it several times without cutting out. This is an 040, it's literally just got 2 pickups per rail, and it didn't cut out. Is it going to do it if I slow down? No. So I'm not keen on the pickup design, but you can't deny that it works well. Okay, so really I need to fully run this in because I don't know how long it's been sitting in its box. Maybe the previous owner never even ran it. I don't know. This is another reason I don't tend to buy second-hand stuff to review, although I am glad I did on this occasion. So I will run it in, but let's just see straight out of the box whether it is a good crawler or not. So let's just gently ease it up. I didn't notice any working lights on it, by the way, so I guess it's not an illuminated loco. But I'm still easing. Ooh. So it just kind of starts. Slow down. Yeah, so at the moment it doesn't seem able to crawl, but that's fair enough because it's probably a little bit sleepy after all its years in hibernation. Yeah, that's about as slow as I can get it to go. So I think with that, I'm going to set it to 50% speed. We'll see how it gets on around the curves and up Gordon's Hill and such. Hopefully it will be nice and stable. And then once it's fully run in, I might as well give it the full hour, mightn't I? We'll see if it can crawl any better, and we'll also see what the pulling power's like. So here we go. Wow. I have to say, this loco is super awesome, and even if it can never crawl, I do love the way it runs. There's something very smooth and quiet about it that just exudes quality, really. It just sounds like a high-spec mechanism. It isn't that high. Like I say, the features on the chassis are absolutely minimal. No lights, no sound, no DCC socket even. But in terms of just raw performance, there is something very pleasing about this. And it's a very small loco with a lot of complex valve gear. and yet it works incredibly nicely. So all in all, I'm quite pleased with this. I did think, you know, is this a rip-off when I paid almost 80 quid for this? Happily not. No, it was worth every penny, actually. It's very detailed, absolutely fascinating, of course, and at last, a good performer as well. So it looks as though this is a happy ending, but I'm going to let this run in. Maybe the performance will be even better after that. So don't go anywhere. I'll see you very shortly. Okay folks, that is running in complete, and I must say, even though I have better runners than this in the collection, it's such a pleasurable loco to run, because at 50% speed as it has been, it just works. You set it going, it doesn't cut out, doesn't derail, it doesn't slow down, it doesn't do anything irritating like a lot more expensive locos than this one do. Yeah, it's just really, really enjoyable to run. It is faster, that's something to say. Let me sort of run it past at 50 for you. Here we go. So there we go, that's forwards at 50, and let's do reverse at 50. Even faster. But I have to say, when it was running in forwards, before I switched to direction to reverse, it was going quite a lot faster in forwards than it was in reverse. So it will be the fact that it's just been doing reverse, which makes it a little bit better in reverse for the time being. So it's a little bit finicky in that sense. Before we ran this loco in, it didn't perform very well at a crawl, so that's what I'm going to try now. I don't expect to see much difference really, but we've got to try. So let me just ease it up very gently. And if I do this gently enough, we will see quite accurately at which point this loco kicks in. And there it is. In reverse, same again. Now can I slow it down into a crawl? Yeah, somewhat, but it does eventually stop itself. Let's try forwards. Slow down into the crawl. So for a second there, it does a beautiful crawl, but then it loses torque, presumably because that massive flywheel has quite a bit of inertia in it to start with, and the motor's able to keep turning for a bit, but the motor's not powerful enough to sustain that, so eventually it does slow down and stop. And sure enough, look at that. No torque at the low speed. If I give it a nudge, it'll probably start again. Yep. But if I stop it, it can't turn its wheels. So not much torque there, to be honest, which is surprising because, you know, that motor does seem like a good one. And at the higher speeds, the torque is good. Let me show you this. There you go. No real difference there. But yeah, alas, it is not a crawler. It's fine, you know, the performance is good, but it's not absolutely outstanding. Now, the tractive effort comes in at 0.2 newtons, which is really, really good for a loco of this size. All of that die-cast really improves the tractive effort of this thing. And so I've set up quite a dramatic looking load. These are Hornby Great Western coaches in the red, so they kind of match the loco chassis. And I think they should be a good test of the loco's pulling power. Now, the loco has NEM couplings on it, which means I've been able to take out the knuckle couplers and just put in a NEM tension lock, so that's really good as well. It's quite rare to find a loco with NEM couplings that doesn't have a DCC socket, so I would guess, is this from the early 2000s? I don't know actually when the NEM coupling system was introduced. Was it in the 90s? Is this older than that? I've no idea. Answers on a postcard, please. But let's back up and let's try a coupling. Very smooth start on this thing. And a very smooth stop as well, which is interesting. Right, let's see if we can do this precisely. If I slow it down at the right moment, it should couple very, very smoothly, but it does take a bit of practice driving this one. So let's try. Ah, nearly. Another little jump. There we go. But the coupling seems to be at the right height, which is good. I mean, come on, the Austrian/German efficiency and accuracy there. It's never going to be at the wrong height, is it? Anyway, here we go. Yes, it can haul them. Let's go for about 40 speed. The squeaking, by the way, is coming from one of these Hornby coaches. It's not the loco. Anyway, today's theme on the sidings and also the other lines is unusual locomotives, small ones too. And I think this one on the middle line is particularly fitting because I thought this one was Austrian, wasn't it? It's the OBB rail bus. It might have been Austrian, could be wrong, somewhere in Europe anyway. Even smaller than today's loco. Not really supposed to be hauling anything, but it can, so I thought, why not? Although it does not like points very much. Come on, a bit more. Poor thing. And then something from Britain, because a lot of my viewers are from Britain. It is the Ruston Shunter, which is unusual, again, due to its absolutely tiny size. So, enjoy the running session, see which other unusual small locos you can spot, and let's see how the glass box is getting on with a load. And the answer is that it seems to be getting on very well indeed. In fact, at the higher speeds like this, those torque issues disappear. Almost completely, look. No slowing down on those curves, really. And, you know, these 4 coaches dwarf the loco, don't they? And yet it doesn't seem to care. It's just hauling them up Gordon's Hill, look up the incline, not breaking a sweat. So that is quite impressive. So the performance has sort of 2 sides to it. You've got the high speed running, well, 50%, 40%, something like that, which is tremendous. It's so smooth, controlled, high torque, consistent, reliable, very, very good. Can't fault that. Down at the slow speeds, you know, if you're shunting around, perhaps trying to couple up to stuff and uncouple from things quite accurately, then it's not going to be quite so good, in fact quite frustrating. And you can't even just chip this and say, yes, I think this will be better on DCC, because it's very much designed for analog only. The motor's not wired up, it's connected directly to the chassis via those contacts, and there's very little room in there for a decoder. In fact, I would say no room for a decoder. You would have to probably put it in that cab area where it would be visible from the outside. Either that or do some machining on the die-cast chassis block thing that holds the motor and has the cab detail on it, but that's more than I could do, definitely. So it's not ever so ideal for the modern modeler, but the level of detail is certainly pretty much undiscernible from more modern locos. And incidentally, if you know when this loco was released, when this version of the model came out, roughly speaking, please do comment down below and let me know, because I would like to know. Otherwise though, it's been a truly fascinating loco to look at. Really enjoyed it, and I would certainly look at other Roco locos, which is a marvellous phrase, from this era. So if you've got any other recommendations of models I might like that are similar to this, please do also post those in the comments, and I would love to give those a look. Just for some fun then, let's do some ratings on the glass box by Roco. The level of detail, regardless of how old this model is absolutely fantastic. The number of separately fitted parts, given how tiny this thing is absolutely insane. I couldn't even count them all. It is missing a few nice modern features though, such as lighting, proper cab detail with painting, and a realistic cab floor. Apart from that though, it's a very well deserved 4-star. The performance is 2.5 star, middle of the road for me. In many ways the performance is lovely, it's nice, smooth and quiet with decent torque at the moderate speeds, but down at the low end there's really no torque there at all, and the loco isn't capable of crawling. That's quite surprising given the 5-pole motor in this loco, and who knows, possibly this loco would have run better when it was brand new. I feel I should say that to be absolutely fair. The pulling power is pretty good for a loco of this size. It weighs in at 144 grams, and so the tractive effort of 0.2 newtons is definitely not that surprising. Same as a Hornby D16, same as the Rapido J70. I think this is smaller than both of those, certainly the D16, so pretty powerful, I would say. The mechanism again is okay, but not the best. It doesn't have proper bearings on the driving axles. That's not too much of a big deal because it does have proper sort of cast bearings in the chassis. No DCC socket though, slightly odd motor access and assembly procedure. Yeah, I'm not too keen on that. Caused me a bit of a problem, and of course I dismantle these things all the time. And general access to the mechanism for cleaning and servicing purposes could have been a little bit better, but again, this is a small loco. It is harder to design this stuff than it is the larger locos with more room. The quality though for me is 4-star. It's quite a good quality loco. Yes, I had a few breakages, but that was almost certainly due to the previous owner rather than some sort of lapse in quality at the factory. That said, a lot of the details are quite fragile, and some of them which were correctly fitted when I got it have proceeded to come out of position, and I've had to refit them. So it is certainly a fragile one, but there's a lot of die-cast on it as well. This is a quality feature I really like. Die-cast boiler, die-cast smoke box, die-cast chassis, Lots of weight to this one, which is great. Value for money then, I think you should take this with a pinch of salt, because I don't know what the RRP for this would have been, and I don't know what this would cost if it was to be released today in this state. But I can talk about the price I paid, which was £79.50, and I think when you consider the way this loco runs, the way it looks, and also the level of detail that it has, there's really no way to fault it. Yeah, I've seen better locos, but not many that cost less than £80. So worth every penny, a 5-star for me. Overall then, that is 7.66 out of 10, not a bad score at all. That's a grade of C, and let's pop it into the logbook where it's fared pretty well. It's not far from the top 10 actually. It's above the Haulage ES1 and below the Hunslet 16-inch. Yeah, if you can find one of these, it sure is a very fascinating model. Well folks, that was a bit of something different, wasn't it? And I really enjoyed it as a result. So yeah, Roco. This is, I think, my first ever Roco loco. There it is again, that marvellous phrase. And yeah, I'm really impressed. If this is what they were producing, I'm guessing probably 20 years ago at an estimate, I can only imagine what a Roco loco would be like today. Yeah, I would love to try such a thing. So yeah, do keep those recommendations coming, and I will take them seriously. I will look and see if I can get something else from this manufacturer, if they're still around even. I think they are, aren't they? But I hope so, because this stuff's pretty interesting. So thank you very much for watching. Please let me know what you think about this. Have you got one? Has it been available more recently with more features such as lighting and DCC? That would be interesting. But for now, thank you again for watching. I will see you very soon. You take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Cheers everybody.